Ciao, Brick Fanatics! That is the full extent of my Italian. Today we are talking about the LEGO Trevi Fountain. Specifically, we think we've uncovered a conspiracy of sorts, because the LEGO Trevi Fountain is coming along at just the right moment for the actual Trevi Fountain. If you were to have visited the Trevi Fountain this time last month, it would not have been in its best possible condition for your visit. The town council had set up a series of walkways over the top of the entire fountain and a little swimming pool for you to throw coins into because the actual fountain was undergoing renovation and therefore shut down. Thus, the LEGO Trevi Fountain has been unveiled just after the actual fountain has been returned to its full glory and splendour. Coincidence? I think not! I mean, No, it's definitely not a coincidence because 2025 is the fountain's Jubilee year, so of course they want the fountain to look its best at this particular moment in time, and that's going to be a great opportunity to sell more LEGO to tourists. But this is not the first case of a LEGO set for an architectural building releasing at a particular moment of renovation for said building in real life. See, last year we got the LEGO Notre Dame Cathedral, and that set was released before the renovation works on the actual cathedral were completed after the big old fire that burned down half of it. And there were a bunch of memes when that set was announced, like, oh, they're going to put a bunch of fire elements in the box so you can accurately recreate it circa 2019. It's an interesting trend there that you see a LEGO set coming out for a historic landmark while that landmark is somewhat in the process of renovation and not actually looking all that great. Now this one is a little bit more of a stretch, but in 2016 the LEGO Group released a Creator Expert Big Ben set, which is big and beautiful and wonderful. Also in 2016 it was announced that the actual Big Ben and the clock tower, which has now been called Elizabeth Tower, was going to undergo some renovation, and so was very quickly covered in scaffolding. And that was covered in scaffolding from 2017 onwards to, sometime somewhat in this decade, I think. And so for most of the time that LEGO set was on sale, the actual Big Ben was just unrecognisable. To that end, we reckon we've identified the next big European landmark to get the LEGO treatment. The Sagrada Familia in Barcelona in Spain is now very nearly almost finished and should be done by 2026 after 144 years of construction. So that should logically be next on the docket, right? Of course, what's actually going on here is that the LEGO Group is adapting old historic landmarks, and the thing about old historic landmarks is they need a lot of renovation, and that is particularly true of the Trevi Fountain, which has been in a state of constant renovation pretty much for the last 2,000 plus years of its history. Yes, that's right, it's time for a history lesson. Yay! First things first, I really like the name Trevi Fountain. It is wonderfully apt and descriptive. You might, as a non-Italian speaker, think to yourself, oh, the Trevi Fountain, it must be this wonderful fountain named after, I don't know, some very fancy Italian thing. No, Tre means three, V means road. It is literally the point where three roads intersect. It is the Trevi Fountain. That's way better than Elizabeth Tower, as mentioned, which is called that simply because everybody looked at it and was like, we've not actually named the clock tower that Big Ben is in, let's just name it after the current monarch. The Trevi Fountain, though, is also associated with another name, the Virgo Aqueduct, or Virgin Aqueduct, depending on what period in history you might happen to be in. And this one has a very interesting history that dates back all the way to 19 BC. So imagine, it is 19 BC. You have never heard of Jesus Christ because he hasn't been born yet. You are a Roman soldier wandering around Rome and you are very, very thirsty. There is a young maiden who approaches you and says, hey, you guys thirsty? There's some water over there. Why don't you go have a drink? And you say, thank you very much, I'm so excited to have finally found a drink that I'm going to name this spot of water after you, random girl. Virgo, meaning virgin, because that's apparently the thing that they wanted to focus on about this particular girl, that she was a virgin. I don't know why, but hey, it was ancient Rome, that's just how they rolled. So the Virgo Aqueduct has been running water into Rome for, over 2,000 years. At this point, it is a pretty old piece of kit, and at the same time, it has been functional and operational for most of that time, which is very impressive. But along the way, such an important piece of infrastructure is going to need updating and changing with time. And indeed, there have been multiple different versions of the ultimate fountain, that is the Trevi Fountain, right at the end there, that have been completed and then worn out and then replaced over time. The version of the fountain that we have now dates back all the way to 1730, when Pope Clement XII decided that the fountain that they had at the time was a bit crummy and naff and needed replacing, so he decided to hold an architecture competition. Architects were encouraged to submit their designs for consideration for the new version of the fountain, and a guy by the name of Nicola Salvi designed the Trevi Fountain and submitted it, and came second in the competition. Unfortunately for Salvi, he was beaten by a fella named Alessandro Galilei, but unfortunately for Galilei, everyone in the area was a little bit racist, and Galilei was from Florence, and they said, we can't have a Florentine designing this fountain for our Roman city, so he was quietly shuffled to the side, and Salvi was given the opportunity to build his fountain instead. Salvi then died, and so did not see the fountain completed. Instead, a fella by the name of Giuseppe Panini took over, and I really want a Giuseppe Panini. That sounds delicious. So we have the version of the fountain which exists to this day, which has of course had to be renovated over time because it is quite old already. Now you might be wondering when in that thousands upon thousands of years of history of the Trevi Fountain did the tradition of throwing a coin over one's shoulder for romance arise? And the answer is, that's actually fairly modern. Or at least the popularization of it is fairly modern. In 1954, the film 3 Coins in the Fountain released. That was a film about throwing coins in the fountain so that you then find somebody to fall in love with, blah, 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 blah. And so people do it in reference to that film rather than anything that is actually as ancient as the history of the fountain itself. It's not entirely different to people gathering at King's Cross Station on the 1st of September for Harry Potter Day. But just because something is a pop culture reference, it doesn't mean it's not a bit of fun. Apparently, 3,000 euros are chucked into the Trevi Fountain every single day, so you can entirely understand why city planners wanted some kind of replacement in place while they're doing these renovations, hence the little swimming pool. Those 3,000 daily euros are donated to the charity Caritas, which is a lovely thing, but as you can imagine, there are also regular attempts to try and steal money out of the Trevi Fountain, which is not a lovely thing. Anyway, because of the huge crowds of people that swarm the fountain every single day, desperate to chuck coins in and hopefully find love, I mean, just talk to some of the other people that are chucking coins in, because you know that they're all single. But because of the huge crowds that swarm the fountain, Rome officials are really not sure what to do with this thing, because even once the renovation's finished, they're still going to be stuck with the biggest problem of all, which is just that the fountain is, if anything, too popular. The challenge of having too much tourism is a problem that is weighing on the minds of people across many different cities around the world, especially in European cities, where there are issues around the damage that is caused by tourism, not just in a sense of the amount of footfall, but also just having that many people in a space, the pushing up of prices, and the fact that it is just awkward to try and negotiate around a city when there's a bunch of people staring at their maps and scratching their heads everywhere you turn. For this reason, city officials in Rome are really not sure what to do with the Trevi Fountain. In December, they introduced a queuing system and are trying to limit the number of people that can actually see the fountain, but I imagine that there is still some tweaking that needs to be done on that plan. What's more, they're almost certainly going to have to do more renovations in the future because this is an old building and there are a lot of people who want to look at it, touch it, feel it, experience it, and that does take its toll on a thing. All of this means that over the course of this LEGO set's lifespan, there are inevitably going to be times when tourists are going to want to see the Trevi Fountain, be unable to see it in its full glory, and therefore have to settle for the LEGO set as a second best alternative. A kind of consolation prize. Well, the weather was a bit naff and there were too many people in the way, so I didn't get a good look, and part of it was covered in scaffolding anyway, so in the end I just gave up and bought this LEGO set. Maybe that's been the LEGO Group's plan all along. Or maybe it hasn't, because that's ridiculous. Anyway, let us know your thoughts on the Trevi Fountain down in the comments. Are you going to be picking up this set? Will you save it as something to buy as a souvenir if you visit the actual Trevi Fountain and Rome? Otherwise, do all of the rest of the YouTube things. Give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe and the notification bell. If you're going to be buying the Trevi Fountain, make sure that you use the affiliate link, which is down in the description, or the QR code that is currently on screen, which take you straight to the LEGO website. It doesn't cost you a penny extra, but when you use those links, we get a little bit of the percentage of the sale, and it helps to keep the lights on at Brick Fanatics. Make sure that you do go to Brick Fanatics, by the way, for all coverage of all things LEGO, including several more articles on the Trevi Fountain set, and make sure that you sign up to our newsletter so that you never miss anything LEGO related ever again. Arrivederci!